Guys, good to see you. Jen, ladies first. Tell me what you thought of the speech.
Yeah, what a great day, Sean. You think of how dark it's been here in Washington the last 4 years. President Trump outlined so much of that and really delivered a message of unity. He used that word in this speech. He said the golden age of America it's a new golden age here. And I think it was a speech that really touched on so many issues that were important to the people that voted him into the office this time around, that delivered that historic mandate, talking about issues like DEI, talking about our military, those that dealt with the vaccine mandate and were pushed out of our military. He's bringing them back in with back pay. There are so many of these issues beyond the border, beyond the economy, the cultural issues that he touched on, that he said, we're not going back there. We're defining two genders in this country, men and women. So refreshing to be able to hear that from that podium after all we heard from Joe Biden, who was sitting there to the side, Kamala Harris, who nearly became our president. And you see a changed man, I think, in President Trump, having been through what he experienced in terms of the lawfare over the last year, in terms of the near assassination that happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, which he spoke of, saying how God saved him that day. So it really is a return to the American values that so many people believe in and want to see at the forefront of policy in this country. And I'm just really excited to see all that's ahead as he begins to sign these executive orders, Sean.
Dr. Stinchfield, what did you take away from the speech? What was the big thing that you said? Yes, I'm glad he said it.
Well, it was almost the tone of it, which was so great. So while I'm celebrating, I'm like on cloud nine. All of us here, we've been waiting 4 years and 3 months for this day to happen. When we knew the election was stolen from him and he wasn't going to be president for the next 4 years. Now he's back. President Trump's tone today was not really a tone of celebration. It was a tone of business. Yeah. This is the shock and awe that America is back. And I think it's going to be a take no prisoners presidency. He's assembled maybe the greatest cabinet in the history of all presidential cabinets, seeing them standing behind him. And one piece of news, which I think is really important, moments after he took the oath of office, Sean, the CBP One app was shut down. You log on that. I have a friend of mine, Oscar Ramirez, who's on the border. He was getting word from the illegals looking to cross this end run around the immigration system. There is a sign that is up that says all appointments are now canceled. This app is shut down. That's within minutes of taking office. So promises kept, promises delivered literally within minutes of taking the oath.
So the thing, to what Jen said, because I was reading the chat on YouTube and stuff as people, and they were like, wow, this is kind of partisan. And I was like, okay, fair enough. But here's the thing. Jen kind of ticked off a bunch of the highlights. I was like, okay, this is everything he promised. All he's actually doing, and you just said it, Grant, it was like, hey, guess what? I promised you a bunch of stuff as a candidate. I'm not going to wuss out of this. I'm going to do every one of the things. And day one, I'm going to start, show you progress. I felt like, what did you want him to do? Get up there and be like, all right, I know I said I was going to shut the border down, but I changed my mind yesterday. Like, this was a guy who got up there and said, you voted for change, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to tell you about it right now, Jen.
And Sean, on that note, in his speech yesterday at the Capital One Arena during his rally, he said, somebody said on my team, oh, maybe I should release some of these orders, a few at a time. And he said, the hell I'm going to do that. These are all going out at once. You pushed me into office. You hired me essentially to go in and get to work. And we've got a lot of work to do. We're not wasting any time. And I love to see that. I love the symbol of him sitting at that desk, which he's going to be doing in the Capital One Arena, sitting there and
Wait,
signing
do you know that? So
orders.
Tell me what you know. Is he, the idea that he's just sitting there getting this stuff done, I think that really is hugely symbolic.
In front of how many? 20,000 people in this arena that obviously were going to be out in the cold today in Washington. Weather took everything inside, but you've got a massive rally there. And for those people who have been through so much, who have felt like they've had a target on their backs over the last 4 years, who've watched this country decline under Joe Biden, to sit there and be able to watch firsthand their president signing these executive orders to bring the country back to the greatness, not only that we had during the last Trump presidency, but even greater given what he could have done over the last 4 years had he been president. It's just going to be so incredible for them to watch and for the rest of us as well.
Sean, I had a chance, I was lucky enough to talk with Peter Navarro this morning. So that's President Trump's trade guy. Right now, as we speak, if everything goes as planned, President Trump should be signing and releasing a memo on trade, which will issue 15 different investigations, which is what he called them, really studies, maybe a better word, that we could take actionable items. And he said this presidency is going to be about tariffs and lower taxes. So I have been saying for a long time that I think the tariffs were going to be used as a threat more than they would actually be instituted. I'm not sure that's right. I think tariffs are going to be a big plan of raising money for the United States of America so he can cut taxes for the American people. And this trade memo, according to Peter Navarro, right now, as we speak, should be historic in nature.
So the thing that I find fascinating is, I mean, whether it's the memo or the orders, like, I was thinking back, I don't know what it was, 5 or 6 that we did in 2017. I think Biden did 22. This isn't, I mean, we'll go through this in a second, some of the big buckets, but I'm just like, this is no joke. Like, it's very clear that he wanted to send a signal that there's a new sheriff in town.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is the shock and awe. That's, I mean, they're even calling that with inside his administration. This is about shock and awe that America is back. And I didn't mean to cut you off, Jen, but it really is amazing. This is going to be an unapologetic presidency, which is so refreshing to me. I thought Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had to be embarrassed when President Trump was talking about common sense, where you get back to common sense, get rid of this transgender nonsense, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there you see Joe Biden smirking. It was very odd. Bill Clinton was like laughing through the whole thing. I don't know whether he was taking joy in Biden being embarrassed, but that whole scene.
By the way, what did you think? What do you think? Like, so I was showing people this on the live feed, but to your point, like, what do you think from the rotunda out to the steps? Do you think that there was ever like that Biden said, like, hey man, I wish you had told me about that, or like, because you're right, it was a complete repudiation.
Mm-hmm.
What an embarrassment, right, Sean? I mean, you think about how Biden 15 minutes beforehand went and pardoned the rest of his family. No surprise there, going in the same way he came.
Really, no surprise, Jen. You weren't surprised at all.
No,
I'm not. No, I mean, are you kidding me? How often do they tell us, he's not going to pardon Hunter? We heard Karine Jean-Pierre from the podium so many times over. We all knew he likely would, and he did. We saw the pardons that came between that. We saw what was going to happen, and he did it 15 minutes before leaving office, going out, really, Sean, as crooked as he came in. It's just so obvious. I mean, President Trump could have done that for himself before he left office. He didn't. Look at all he dealt with over the last 4 years. Such a contrast.
It's just so funny that, like, Trump gets, Jen, to your point, on his way out the door last time, Trump gets stuck with all this. He could have done this, and he was proposing this. And they crapped on him for things like he could have gone after his enemies, but he didn't. He could have pardoned himself, but he didn't. But the media got hysterical about each one of these things. Everything that they went nuts about with respect to Trump, Biden actually did. Like, he took away 400 hard pass of members of the media without any silence. He pardoned Fauci. He pardoned Milley. He pardoned his son. He pardoned his family preemptively. Like, all this stuff that they had accused Trump of potentially and hypothetically doing, Grant, he never did. He got stuck with the accusation. And then Biden goes and does it.
And Biden will get a pass from the mainstream media, I'm sure, on all of this. But let me make something clear about the pardons, and not to shamelessly self-promote the podcast, but I break it down today in the podcast about these pardons. So according to the Supreme Court in 1886, okay, you ready for this?
Yep.
Pardons are plenary, can be exercised either before a legal proceeding taken or during their pending proceedings or after conviction. So before, during, or after, you can pardon. So you can make the argument whether it's unconstitutional or not to issue a pardon, a blanket pardon like this. The Supreme Court would have to reverse itself, but it gets even better. Okay. In 1915, the Supreme Court ruled that a pardon must be accepted. It cannot be forced upon the subject. And if it is accepted, okay, this is a quote. The pardon carries the imputation of guilt. Accepting it is an admission of guilt.
Wait, so just repeat
from
that.
the
Where is
Supreme
that?
Court in
Wait.
1950.
That's so huge. Tell me, what is that? Is that from the court itself?
That's from the court itself. It was Burdick versus the United States. I believe it was Wilson was going to pardon somebody who was set to testify in front of a grand jury, and there was all this talk about whether or not he would still have to testify, because a lot of people are questioning. All right, well, you can't take the fifth now because you won't incriminate yourself. Actually, this ruling still says that you still have a right not to incriminate yourself, pardon or not. But it made it clear that you have to accept the pardon in order for it to be valid, okay? Because the guy who was going to testify in front of the grand jury didn't want to accept the pardon. So it has to be accepted.
And so in that case, when he didn't accept it, what happened?
I believe he ended up still testifying, and there was questions about whether or not he could be convicted on this stuff with the pardon, and they said he could, and he paid a $500 fine and was. Now, $500 in 1915 was a lot. This was the editor of a newspaper, the New York Tribune. I don't know all the backgrounds of the whole case, but my takeaway from the case was that the Supreme Court looked at it as a admission of guilt if you take the pardon. And so if you accept the pardon, you're admitting your role in something. So I would like the mainstream media to literally ask Adam Schiff, Liz Cheney, Mark Milley, some of these, Michael Fanone, this cop from J6, he pardoned him too. So I'd like to know, do you?
By the way, he also pardoned the cop that shot Ashley Babbitt.
Yes, Bird, I believe that guy's name was.
Michael Bird. So wait, the two takeaways from what you're telling me are, one, they have to accept it. So Adam Kinzinger, Milley, Fauci, Liz Cheney, and his family have to accept it. Now, I'm going to say that his family is going to say yes, because Fauci may not have known or something or whatever. But you can't, if you're his sister, you got to know that he's doing this. Okay. And then secondly, what you're saying is that according to this case, that's an admission of guilt by accepting the pardon.
Yeah, well, the quote is, a pardon carries an imputation of guilt. Accepting it looks as an admission of guilt. That is how the Supreme Court wrote it. So take that for what you meant.
I think just issuing the pardons is an admission of guilt on behalf of all of the Biden family. Obviously, he knows they've been up to no good. The conservatives have been pointing fingers, obviously, at the Biden family, looking at all the evidence over the years, saying this is what we've got here. Nobody wanted to take a look at it. They know what was ahead, but obviously President Trump has work to do. So this is interesting to see how that will play out.
All right, so Jen, Grant brought up the idea of the media. Like, do you think that you've been in and out of the media. Do you think that any one of these reporters is going to do anything close to what Grant suggested?
Of course not. I mean, Sean, we all know this.
I know that.
They're preparing. They're looking at the lawfare that's about to take place. Obviously, there have been a number of groups that are preparing for these executive orders to go after the new Trump administration, and they're all ready to pick apart every executive action that's going to take place over the next multiple days here. They're ready to go after him. It's going to be the same playbook we saw over the first Trump administration.
So, Grant, I want to read you this. This is
haven't.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Jake Tapper tweeted this out. I'm glad we're all sitting. Yeah. On December 3rd, 2020, I asked President-elect Biden about reports that Trump was considering preemptive pardons. He said, quote, "It concerns me in terms of what kind of precedent it sets and how the rest of the world looks at us as a nation of laws and justice." That's what Jake Tapper tweeted that out today. Now the question is, do you think that anyone at CNN is going to, who, by the way, just lost a $5 million lawsuit for defaming a Navy veteran, will do anything close to this to look at this?
I don't think they will, and I would like them also to run a clip from Joe Biden. I think it was a week or two ago. He was asked about pardoning himself, and his answer was, "Pardon myself? Why would I do that? I didn't do anything wrong." So if you didn't do anything wrong, you wouldn't pardon yourself. Then why are you pardoning your family if they didn't do anything wrong? Why are you pardoning the J6 committee? Under his philosophy of why he wouldn't pardon himself wouldn't mean he wouldn't pardon those other people. Go play that clip over and over again for me. But they're not going to revisit that because they're going to bury this. I saw a meme. Biden will be relegated to a dash mark. It'll be President Trump, right? 45-47. Biden's the dash mark. That's it. That's all this guy is.
Yeah, these so-called journalists, they should be thrilled that President Trump is back in office, not only for their ratings, which have been in decline, but also the level of access they're now going to have. I mean, my goodness, they had none during the Biden administration. We once, I think, saw President Biden at the podium in the White House briefing room. How many times was President Trump there? And I anticipate if it's anything like the last rodeo, he'll be in front of that podium quite a bit. He's obviously got a capable press secretary in Caroline Leavitt, but we know how much he loves talking to the media, all of the media. We never saw him say, I don't want to speak to CNN. They were one of the first that he would go to. You didn't see that for the last administration. So I would hope that these journalists would actually do their job for a change and get that access and give transparency that we deserve. But I don't have that much confidence given what I've seen over the last few years.
Sean, so-called journalists. Go ahead,
Sean, let me ask you, because you were press secretary for President Trump. So, and this is a different time. It clearly is, as you mentioned, the mood, the feeling, everything is different. The knowledge that President Trump has coming in. What do you think happens with the alternative media in the White House press room? You've got The First, where we're broadcasting from. You've got Real America's Voice, that my show. You've got One American News. These alternative conservative outlets, do they get more access than ever before? Do you think President Trump realizes the role that organizations like those played in his election?
Yeah, so you're bringing up a really good question, and it's twofold. So the first question is access. What Karine Jean-Pierre did, and I've beat this drum a couple times before, is she stripped the hard passes of all of these people, the Daily Signal, Breitbart, all these people, and they basically made it harder to get into the White House, and no one from the mainstream media complained. And so I don't generally share conversations I have with the team or the president, but I will tell you, because I've been public about it, that I have shared with them that the first thing they need to do is undo all that and get back to the model that I had, which is nothing unique, but basically my philosophy was the more the merrier. Now, if that means Grant Stinchfield or Jenn Pellegrino or Sean Spicer wants to come in and cover the White House, then we can, right? My view was, I don't care if it's right or left. I'm just going to say yes to everybody you want to come in. That's the first part. They need to restore the hard passes and the access, because right now, if I wanted to apply for a pass under the rules that Karine Jean-Pierre put, I couldn't get in and you couldn't get in. You have to get first credentialed by the House Gallery on Capitol Hill. And the only way that you get, and see, this is why this is a cute little trap that they've set. You have to get a House pass, you have to prove that you cover the House on a regular basis. I don't do that. I don't believe you do that, Grant. And so therefore we wouldn't qualify for that. Well, if you don't qualify for that under Karine Jean-Pierre's rules, you can't get a White House pass,
Sean,
yeah.
I was just going to say, it also raises the question, what is the future of the White House Correspondents Association, right?
Well, no, that gets to part two.
For a number of years. I think back to 2020 when I was in the White House, and obviously we had COVID rules back then, and you'd get in trouble if you were in there either without a mask or out of place. They only had so much room in that briefing room, and I know that the administration was not happy with that. They wanted the smaller outlets like I was with at the time to be in that room, and they said, okay, we'll invite you in here, but it was a constant battle with everybody else in there that leaned to the left, that didn't want people like me in there. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle this.
And that gets back to the point that Grant was asking, though, which is that what she should do, what Caroline and President Trump should do, is say, okay, I can't force anybody to come, but I will grant access to anybody who wants to, and then we will highlight them. We will give interviews. I talked to people on the right who have been in the briefing room that have been absolutely shut out with Karine Jean-Pierre. And so as you guys know, when I was there, I brought in Skype voices. I called on reporters that normally had not been called on during the Obama years. So they need to make it proactively something that they do, that they say, great, you attend the briefing, I'll call on you. Because for a lot of outlets, they can maybe get access, but then even after they get access, they won't get called on. And that's equally important so that they can come into the White House, they get attention. And Grant, I think that it's not just shows and outlets. You're right, The First and OAN and all that. But it's also shows. Like I have, let's just take Megyn Kelly, for example. She's not with a network, but she might want to go down. So could she go down and get a question or an interview? They need to, or, Dan Bongino or whomever. But the point is that even if you're not affiliated, President Trump, I think, really used effectively long form and independent media. And they should really do a lot of that again. And then lastly, I'll just say this, is that to Jenn's point, the White House Correspondents Association is an outdated, left-wing, useless organization. And the more and what happens is that they went and made a deal with the press office in the early 1990s and said, hey, instead of you having to do all the ridiculous logistics about who's in the pool and who's doing that, we'll do it for you. And I think that this White House should reclaim a lot of those responsibilities and say, hey, thanks for coming.
Yes.
This is not your room. These are not your seats. This is a government room and everybody gets access to it, not just you guys.
Well, I remember when I was back at Newsmax with you guys, the White House Correspondents' Dinner was happening, and our boss, the owner of Newsmax, asked me if I would like to go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and I respectfully declined. I said, I can't go there. What? These are the same people that call me a racist and do the most horrible coverage of our shows. I can't go, and I think there were a lot of people in my boat that ended up not wanting to go.
Oh no,
I'm not sure who
Grant, I got in
taking.
trouble for not going. I mean, I was reprimanded because I refused to go for the same reason. I was like,
three of us that aren't there anymore.
Hey, I went as well, and I got a lot of grief from other people that they saw pictures of me there, and I said, listen, I was invited. One year I did decline, but the first time I did go, didn't get a lot of good feedback about it. And, I guess my philosophy at that time was, listen, we should have a presence. We shouldn't be pushed out of that room. So I went. But man, they don't like us at all. And I really hope that this new admin
give them credibility.
takes control over the briefing room.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.